Thanks so much for calling the Michael Duke Show. Hold on 1 second while we connect you to the show.
You are the only participant in the conference.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out themichaeldukesshow.com.
Utopia. Firearms Friday.
As Thomas Jefferson stated, it is the right and duty of the people to be at all times armed.
Say hello to my little friend.
I say that the Second Amendment is, in order of importance, the First Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms is the one right that allows rights to exist at all.
The Michael Duke Show. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Firearms.
From my cold, dead hands.
Friday.
This is my rifle, this is my gun, this is for fun, and this is for fun.
Firearms Friday.
Oh, yeah. You know what day it is. It's that favorite day of the week where we get a chance to talk about the issues that we love, and our favorite topic, which, of course, is firearms and the Second Amendment, gun rights, tips, tricks, tactics, but everything else that we could possibly think of here on the program. Welcome to the Michael Duke Show, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator, and live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com. Good morning, my friends. How are you? Are you ready to do it? Kind of a it's been kind of weird, you and me, man, just you and me. That's right. We've got a lot of stories to cover today from around the country, and it's going to be fun. We're going to cover a lot of headlines. We're going to talk a lot of stories, but first and foremost, I have to let you know that I'm taking phone calls today. Phone lines are open for the first time in a couple of weeks. Which I'm assuming is going to be good here. 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864. Would love to hear what you guys have to say today on any of the topics that we're going to take up and talk about. Participation is encouraged on the phones. If you want to call and ask a question or talk about something related to firearms, I'd love to hear what you have to say. And we're gonna have a conversation, and that could include conversations about some of the madness that's happened over the last 10 days or so here in regards to the Second Amendment and Charlie Kirk's support of that as well, because we saw a lot of rhetoric about how anybody who supports the Second Amendment is fair game on this kind of thing. We saw that rhetoric, which surprisingly sounded a lot to me like some of the victim blaming that people have been accused of in other situations, like did you see what she was wearing? Oh, she was asking for it, right? Oh, did she, where she went and what she was wearing? Oh man, she was that kind of stuff, right? We've seen a lot of that. And so anyway, the phone lines are open today for any discussion related to the Second Amendment. And we'd love to invite you to participate. 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864. And we'd love to hear what you guys have to say on anything today. We'd love to have some participation. So feel free to call in. Remember, the rule of Firearms Friday is that there is no such thing as a dumb gun question, right? We'll answer whatever question we can. We will do our best to answer it, and hopefully you will, hopefully we'll have a meeting of the minds, so to speak, on that. Then, of course, the end of the show today, we will finish up with Willie Waffle, who comes in to give us our weekend movie and entertainment review. And I imagine that today Willie and I will probably talk about the, 800-pound gorilla in the room, which, of course, is the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel from the Late Show. And so we'll from his Late Show slot. So I'm sure we'll cover that here at the end of the show today as well. Just to, hopefully it'll be a little bit of a lightening up. That's what we try and do at the end of the show, is a little bit of lightening up. But this show was brought together and came about because we want to help demystify the firearm, right? Because guns in America is a, it's a thing that's unique out there in the world, that America has something of a, people say a love affair with guns, but it's not just a love affair with guns. You have to understand, it's something that we as a nation grew up with. We grew up along with the development and the proliferation of firearms in the world, giving people the ability to defend themselves and to protect what they have, and westward expansion, colonialization, the war with England. All those things. It's just something that's just baked down into our DNA. It's not, and I think that's hard for a lot of people who live outside of the U.S. to comprehend, especially in places where they have a flirting relationship with freedom, right? Where maybe their countries weren't built on a foundation of those freedom ideals, and they just have a hard time understanding it. Or maybe they live in a place where for multiple generations they have been disarmed, or had been unable to utilize anything to protect themselves. They had to depend on the government to protect them, and hope beyond hope that the government had their best interests in mind, which we know is not always the case when it comes to governments and peoples around the world. So that's why we got started in this discussion, because I was fearful, and still continue to be concerned. I was fearful that the direction that we were going would see a continued curtailment of our rights. And that was kind of troubling to me. In fact, one of the first things that I remember tackling on Firearms Friday was the sunsetting of the assault weapons ban. And I remember having that conversation about, here it was. And again, this is where I'm not a respecter of people's, as far as their political affiliations, because I remember clearly that I was so pissed. I was so mad about the fact that President George W. Bush, ostensibly a Republican and freedom fighter and everything else. I remember him saying that because there was a lot of hand-wringing going on about how the assault weapons ban was going to sunset. And he said, well, if you get it to my desk, I'll sign it. If you get it to my desk, I will sign it. And that was kind of one of those points, aha moments, as somebody who was libertarian, kind of conservative leaning libertarian who was like, okay, I can support these guys because they, and then I just realized how it was one of the clearest moments to me to where I realized that both the left wing and the right wing were both on the same bird. You know what I mean? That we just couldn't trust what politicians said or what we assumed that they believed based on their party affiliation, etc. And it was that was an aha moment for me. And quite honestly, it was one of the reasons why we created Firearms Friday, so that we could, talk about these issues and try and get over and demystify it, kind of get over what the talking heads were saying. Because, I'll be honest with you, when it comes to the Second Amendment and some of the mechanical things about firearms themselves and discussions, there are very few talking head experts out there that the news media will bring on that really know what the hell they're talking about, right? There's just so little, they won't bring some of the experts into the field who are actual experts, Mossad Ayub or, Colio Noir or, Jeff Cooper, or, they didn't bring people like that onto their shows to talk about some of the actual real issues or real, I guess, to get the expert opinion. There was a lot of bloviating going on there. And so that's why we kind of got started with this, to try and balance that out with some truth and some understanding of the actual issues, or to talk to talk plain old facts about, about firearms and how they work, how the firearms work, what the law actually says, how it is actually applied, et cetera, et cetera. So today, again, it's you and me, and we're going to cover a lot of things here in the next couple hours. A lot of the stories that are going on around the country and the reaction to it, including some stuff here locally in the state. And I gotta tell you, if you've been following what's been going on, and specifically in Anchorage, and I know everybody's like, oh, I mean, who cares about Anchorage, man? Right? I mean, who cares about it's Anchorage? Nobody wants to live in Los Anchorage. And I mean, I understand that feeling, but at the same time, remember, as goes Anchorage, so goes the rest of the state eventually. We've seen that, time and time again, that it's just this continual, canary in the coal mine effect, I guess, is what I would say to everything that's going on out there. And so I would love for you to, I'd love for you to hang out with us and continue our discussions this morning, because we're going to go into some of the things that are happening out there as well. So before I get too deep into this, because once I get started, it'll be hard to get me to shut up, I think we'll take a quick break and we'll come back and start talking about it. And specifically, we'll talk about, I think specifically we're going to talk about, why it's probably a good idea in America to ask yourself the question, should I go forth armed? And I mean, I think it's a valid question, and maybe we'll during the break here, maybe we'll put the question to the chat room and see what, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, but, should you go forth armed? That's the question that I think that a lot of us are asking, especially in light of some of the things that have come out in the media and on socials and everything else over the last 10 days. I think we'll start there, and then maybe we'll dive into the things here locally in Anchorage, and then we'll maybe get to some of the big national stuff as well as we get further along in the show. But I think we'll start there when we come back. Is that we'll start talking about going forth armed. Is it something we should consider? Now, that's a loaded question for this show, but You know what I mean? All right. We're going to continue. Again, if you want to call in and you want to sound off about this instead of participating in the chat room or anything else, you want to answer that question, phone lines are open at 319-527-3864, 319-527-3864, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Sorry. I forgot to do something before we got started there that I needed to take care of. All right. Good morning, my friends. Thank you for being part of it here. I got this new little thing here that I'm trying to figure out what is going on here. Oh, I made the mistake. It's a personal choice, says Brian. It's a personal choice. The follow-on question is, if you do, should you get self-defense insurance? Now, that is a much deeper question. And it's something I've considered for many years. I don't know. How many of you have self-defense insurance? Whether it was what was the NRA had one? It was good. The Shield, they had one. The USCCA has got one. I think the NRG, the National Gun Rights Association, NGRA, whatever it is. How many of you have self-defense or concealed carry insurance? I have never had it. And boy, that's a deeper subject, Brian. That's a good topic to bring up for a whole show. But I do agree with you. It's definitely a personal choice. It's definitely a personal choice, and it's something that everybody should be asking themselves. Frank says, I don't go armed daily. Okay. I mean, which is fine, totally fine, no criticism. But I just wonder, do you know which day you might need it? I mean, that's really the question. Do you know which day I just don't feel like it. Today's not a dangerous day, but tomorrow is. That's kind of where I'm at on this. Terry says, go forth armed. Yes. And living here, we can be pretty sure there are a lot of people armed. And I agree with that. We know that in Alaska, that there's probably, you walk into a grocery store, there's probably at least 5 or 6 people who are armed in any kind of a grocery store of any kind of size, right? We know that. So yeah, I agree with that. I'm going to mark a couple of these because I'm going to come back to them when we get back to the radio. Anthony says, you have a duty to go forth armed. Choosing to not defend yourself and relegating it to others is an unethical irresponsibility. And I think you've pretty much highlighted how I feel about that. Now, Frank, always the devil's advocate. He says, where is it my duty to be armed? Frank, it's not written down anywhere. It's an implicit duty, right? That has to do with personal responsibility. It's not written down somewhere that you have a duty. Duty is not something that's necessarily outlined in some kind of flyer or with bullet points. It's a decision that's made based on the totality of circumstances. So it's not written down anywhere that says it's your duty to be armed. You need to make that decision. Brian says, when I might need it, every time I leave my house. And that's where I'm at. I mean, I had to laugh because on Wednesday, I had to travel to Soldotna, and I was in such a hurry. I loaded the car, got everything out. I had a bunch of stuff in my arms. I got in the car. I started driving down the road and then realized that I'd left my Piazzolla on top of my dresser on the way out the door. It's right there next to I turned around and drove back. I'd may never have needed it, but not today. Maybe I did. Maybe today was the day I needed. So anyway, yeah, it's always armed. So, all right, we're gonna dive into this here in just a second and get back to it. Thank you for joining us this morning. Please like and share, like and follow. The shares apparently are the big thing. I was reading something about the algorithm the other day. The shares are the big thing, but share and like and comment. Here we go.
What the hell's an assault weapon? What isn't? If I assault you with a penguin, doesn't that make it an assault weapon? Does this mean that if we hurt your feelings, you'd consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can live with that. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay, some interesting responses in the chat room this morning. And I think predominantly the responses have been, I asked, do you go forth armed? And should you? Now, this is a personal decision. Like anything. I mean, I think firearms ownership in general, I'm not one of those guys that's like, quoting Heinlein about, an armed society is a polite society. I mean, I've used the quote, don't get me wrong, but I'm not using it to bolster the fact that we should mandate that everyone be armed. Kennesaw, Georgia, they've got a mandate that every household should have a gun in it, and they've got the lowest crime. Well, it's true, they do, but I'm not advocating that. Because we all know that there are people, we know people in our own personal lives that probably should not have access to a firearm, right? We all know somebody, crazy Uncle Eddie or somebody, right? I mean, we all know that there's somebody that shouldn't. So it should be a personal decision. So I'm not mandating that that anybody should, that it should be, put into law or code or anything else. But if you have decided, you've got to ask yourself the reasons why. And there's been some interesting commentary here. I'm just kind of collating some of the responses right now. But Brian brings up an interesting point. First and foremost, he says it's a personal choice. Do you go forth armed or not? And he says, but a follow-on question, if you do, should you get self-defense insurance? Now, this is a topic that we haven't covered this in a long time. We have covered it in the past, and I've shared some of my thoughts on it. But I think that's a discussion that deserves probably its own whole segment on a Firearms Friday, where we talk about, self-defense insurance, concealed carry insurance. Should we get it? Should we not? And his follow-on comment is that Professor David Yamane, who's been on the program here recently, has a good piece on this on his Substack. I'm going to have to go out and take a look at that and read up on that before we come back to that. But that's a great follow-up question on that as well. Terry says, going forth armed, yes, and living here, we can be pretty sure there's a lot of people armed. So, we are, again, a constitutional carry state and have been for many years. So, yes, I think it's pretty safe to say that if you walk into, any decent-sized, grocery store or, retail facility, that there's probably going to be a half a dozen people around you that are probably armed, and you just don't know about it, right? You just don't know what's going on. So before we, as we continue to just think about that, yes, I think that there are a lot of people out there who've decided to do that. Anthony said, you have a duty to go forth armed. Choosing to not defend yourself and relegating it to others is unethically irresponsible, right? Is unethical and irresponsible, I guess I should say. And I would agree with that. Probably falls closest to my own philosophical beliefs on that. That, if I'm going to take personal responsibility for myself, for my family, for those around me, then I have to make a decision. Should I go forth armed? Now, in light of recent events and the explosion of kind of the both sides of the discussion on social media, I have it has just reaffirmed to me the need to be able to defend myself in any situation. Now, I've been carrying a gun for a long time, right? I mean, 30 plus. Well, I'm 56, so 32 years, something like that. Anyway, I've been carrying long before it was constitutionally legal, or however you want to look at it, to carry it. I was doing it because I just believed in my own self possession and my own self-defense, being able to defend myself from others. So I've been doing this for a long time, but I think Anthony's point is well made, that you're relegating it. If you don't do it, you're choosing not to defend yourself. You're choosing to rely on others. You're choosing to rely on a governmental entity. And for me, it was a statistical game, right? You've got 10,000 citizens and you've got, 100 police officers for 10,000 citizens. Statistically, how does that work out? That means they're probably not going to be there at a point where you probably need to be helped or defended, right? So the Lord helps those who help themselves. That's kind of where I was at back in my day. And I think that's important to consider. Now, some would argue, in a situation like what happened last week is obviously, sometimes, yes, somebody may get the jump on me. Something may happen to me where I'll never see it coming. This is true. It is true. But if it's a situation where I could see it coming and I just didn't bother because, I could never see it coming. And so why bother? I'm going to feel really stupid if I coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? You know what I mean? Because Frank in the chat room said, he says, I don't go armed daily. That's what he said. And that's totally all right. I'm totally okay with that. That is your right. But my question basically becomes then, how do you know how today is going to go? What makes you decide whether or not, is today a good day? Or is today a day that you feel like you may be at risk? I mean, just how do you know, right? That's like only having a fire extinguisher up in my house sometimes. Sometimes I put it in the shed. Sometimes I put it under the sink in the kitchen in case maybe today there'll be a grease fire. That's like playing Russian roulette with, your seatbelt or your, whatever. It's like, we just don't ever know. So it's, so there's some thought that has to go into this. And I think what has been brought home to me, again, especially, based on the past 10 days worth of discussion and social media fervor and everything else, is there are some people out there that heretofore you would have considered to be fairly rational, fairly reasonable. And now you're like, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure how these people would react to something I could say or something that goes on or to some perceived infraction. And by golly, I would just love to make sure that I have the ability to protect myself and others if something goes wrong. That's all. Again, it's just like a fire extinguisher or a smoke detector. It's there only if I absolutely need it. So it's an interesting discussion. All right. I want to get over to the phones before we continue on this discussion. I see Ron from North Pole is joining us this morning, so let's go over here and see what Ron has to say. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
I'm well, Michael. How about
I'm
how about yourself?
I'm doing good, my friend. I'm doing excellent. What's on your mind today?
Well, you mentioned a name that brought one of my favorite quotes to mind, and that name was Jeff Cooper. And of course, there you can go for pages and pages with quotes from Cooper. But I think one that stands out is, "If you can't reach it, your training is wasted."
Well, that's 100% true. That's 100% true. If you can't reach it, your training is wasted, because you spend time, you spend effort, you do all these things, you protect it, and then to leave it at home, it's a frustrating thing. I will, and that's was kind of my point to Frank is, I don't carry all the time. Okay, well then how do you just? I mean, how do you know, right? To me, it's an idea. It's an either or. Either you are going to carry or you're not going to carry. And I can understand there are some times where you have to go someplace that's sensitive, maybe, or something like that. But for the most part, I don't think you can just. I think if you're serious about your own protection and those around you, I don't think you can pick and choose which day is going to be good and which day is going to be bad. Do you think, Ron?
Well, if you or I could do that, we would be Elon Musk.
Well, that's true. That is true, for sure. If we knew that, I'd go play some Vegas odds if that was the case, right? I'd go pick an Alaska Lotto number right now if I could figure that out right now, right?
Exactly. So you have a great day, and it's great to have you have control over your own destiny down there.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, Ron. Thank you so much for calling in and participating this morning.
All right. Bye-bye, Michael.
All right. We'll see you later. Yeah, one of my that is one of my I'd forgotten about that Jeff Cooper quote. My other favorite Jeff Cooper quote was something along the lines of, you use your handgun to fight your way back to the rifle that you never should have left behind in the first place. Which is, I always think about that when I'm watching one of these television shows where the hero, is in some kind of, I don't know, crazy situation where he's fighting a bunch of bad guys or something in a building, and they've all got rifles and stuff, and he's got a handgun, and he downs some bad guys, and then he picks up the rifle, checks it, and then throws it away or does what. And I'm just like, dude, you might want to pick up that rifle. Anyway, I'm always reminded of that quote whenever I see something like that, with me. Oh my gosh, Anthony's trying to tell me how old I am. MD's been carrying guns since a box of rounds cost 2 shilling and a raccoon ankle. Not quite that long, but it was crazy. And so the question is, do you go forth armed? And one of the reasons why I asked this question, of course, part of it has to do with the madness surrounding the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But in Alaska here specifically, it also has to do with some of the things that have been happening around our community. Now, in Anchorage, in just the last few days alone in Anchorage, there have been a spate of shootings. There was, a drive-by. It seemed like a random drive-by. There was another shooting in downtown where somebody was actually killed. There was a shooting in a Safeway in Anchorage where the security guard was just checking receipts. You know how they do on the way out the door. I know I find it irritating too, but apparently this guy found it so irritating that he pulled out a gun and shot the security guard in the stomach. And so it's when I'm asking you, are you going forth armed? You're saying, well, that'll never happen to me. All you have to do is open up the news in the local papers in the Anchorage area anyway, and take a look at it and see that may not necessarily be the truth. You may be having to defend yourself in beautiful downtown Anchorage. Now, again, people say, I don't care. But I think what we're seeing is kind of a change in the mentality of some of the, Now, it either has to do with the policing of it, or it has to do with the mentality of the criminal, and I'm not sure which one it is. But there's seems to be more of a boldness to some of the criminality that we're seeing across the country. And so you could wait around and depend on the police, who are minutes away in any given situation, or you could depend on yourself. Now, it's not going to stop everything or anything. It's not going to stop everything. But being armed at least gives you an option if you have the ability to use it. And as we've talked about with defensive gun use, and this is something that Charlie had talked about in detail, was that defensive gun use was the reason why the Second Amendment was so important. It wasn't the actual number of shooting deaths or people that were hurt. It was the number of times that a firearm was used, in many cases without a shot even being fired, to stop a crime. And Dr. Lott, John Lott, and I have talked about this a lot. We even some of the most conservative cases from anti-gun, from organizations that you would consider to be anti-gun, including the Harvard School, where they have examined this issue, has shown that, for example, I think Harvard's number was 97,000 cases when they studied this. It was 97,000 cases a year of defensive gun use, DGU. And that was, again, at a time when the murder rate, the death by firearm rate for criminals, not suicides, was somewhere in the 10, 11,000 range. So when you have 9 times the number of people stopping crimes that are dying from crimes by firearm, that's still a pretty good. And I know it's a trade-off. Now, again, each one of those deaths is a tragedy. I'm not trying to minimize that, but I'm saying from a statistical standpoint, it makes sense. Now, that's on the low end of the scale, because other studies, Gary Kleck and others, as they look at this, have estimated that number is actually closer to 2 to 3 million DGUs a year. 2 to 3 million. So instead of 9 times, now we're hundreds of times more likely to be able to stop a crime than to be part of one. And I think that is the important part out there. You just have to have the ability to defend yourself. That's what I think the Second Amendment and, going forth armed, I think that's what it brings to mind. That's why I've always done it. That's it. Because in my mind, I was like, I'm not going to depend on somebody else who statistically, I'm 1 in 1,000, one police officer for every 1,000, which is, it's even lower than that. But just to say that it's 1 police officer for every 1,000 person, I'm not going to depend on somebody who's got to take care of 999 other individuals before me to do that. I should take responsibility for my own self. That's why I've done that. But you look at what's going on, and we'll get back into this here when we return, but you look at what's going on in places like Anchorage and other places. And I think, to me, it's a convincing argument that we probably need to be able to defend ourselves just in case. And if you want to take responsibility for yourself and your families and your loved ones and those around you, it might be something you want to consider. All right, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free ticket radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right. We're in the break right now. This is a story. I hadn't even seen this story. Bank robbery yesterday in It's just a bank robbery, no big deal. In the Anchorage area, this is just another a section of this. Anchorage woman dies after post road shooting. A crazy turn of events. Grocery store security guard shot over receipt. I mean, it's just this, and that's just the last 2 days. That's just the last 2 days, and now an armed robbery in at a Wells Fargo in Anchorage. So either criminals are getting bolder, and there's a there's a change to it. There's a change to the whole philosophy of what's going on. Criminals are getting bolder, or I don't know. Maybe it's just the way of the world. But it really, again, every time I look at this, I just feel more justified. I feel more justified in making that decision so many years ago that I would go forth armed. Okay, and then again, to look at the madness on social media and realize that many of these people would be just as happy, maybe not to pull the trigger themselves, but they'd be just as happy to see me dead as anybody else, meaning that they wouldn't lift a finger if we were, if there was any kind of danger going on. That just reminds me that I am, again, responsible for myself and to be able to take care of myself because nobody else is coming. Anthony says, I'll simplify it. You have the choice. You have the choice to not arm yourself, so long as you accept that those individuals who do arm themselves also have a choice not to defend your life. If you're cool with that, go on with your bad self. Yeah. Yeah, when seconds matter, says Zach, help is only minutes away. That's right. So what do you armed guys do when you fly? Well, we put it in a box, we lock it, we get we get the grope from the TSA, they do the full check, we go to where we end up at the other end, and we continue on. That's it right there. We continue on. But that's exactly what we do. We just, we proceed ahead. Let's see. Rick just said, I learned something new. I did not know that a raccoon ankle was a form of barter. Get with the program, man. Just get with it. Rick goes on to ask, this is a really deep subject. What is the perfect size to carry? Is it based on the physical size of individual? If one decides to carry, you should take it upon yourself to go to class, not to learn how to shoot or carry, but the what ifs, what happens after. And you're 100% right on that, Rick. 100% right. Let's see. Anthony says, my gun travels with me as per FAA regulations required. If something happens in the air, I'm reserved to fight the enemy till death takes me in defense of my family or others. I may not have my gun, but I'm still armed in the sense that I am prepared. Yeah. Richie says, in reality, the reality we're seeing almost daily, people are losing their minds and becoming increasingly violent. It's all personal choice. If you want to play the odds and hope the police show up, if they do at all. I mean, that's really what you're doing. You're playing the odds that somehow a police officer will be somewhere near you when you may need them, which we all know is statistically, the chances of that happening are minimal. Yeah, a road rager, says Richie, just got popped in Soldotna for using a firearm during a road rage incident. It's not just in the Anchorage area. Thank you for reminding me of that. I forgot about that one too. I was going to bring that one up. There you go. Teresa says, somebody in our town has been going around leaving previously locked doors to homes slightly ajar. Well, okay. Brian says, I will confess that I wasn't armed yesterday. Between air travel to entering a federal facility, I was hamstrung. So the yes, I carry every day, and I think that's understood. Like I said earlier, there are some times when you have to go to some kind of facility where it's not allowed, and you're left with a quandary of, do I leave it in my car, or do I just leave it at home? And I mean, I've had to deal with that. I understand totally. But there you go. Let's go on here. I'm playing catch up, but I've only got 15 seconds. We're not going to make it here. I've only got 15 seconds here. Hey, William, thanks for coming in. He says I look good. All the best. Thanks, Bill. All right. Here we go.
What the hell's an assault weapon?
You know, if we could just figure out how to get all of the murder guns and the attack guns and not keep selling those to people and just sell protection guns, I think that would be great and solve a lot of problems.
Does this mean that if we hurt your feelings, you'd consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can live with that. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay. Lots of good conversations in the chat room today about this topic. And I think Rick brings up I should have marked it, but I didn't. He says, here it is. Let me mark it so that I can come back to it. Rick says, this is a really deep subject. You know, what is the perfect size to carry? Is it based on the physical size of the individual? If one decides to carry, should you take it upon yourself to go to class? And is that not to learn how to shoot or carry, but the what ifs, what happens after? And we've talked about that at great length on this program over the years, and maybe we should have a show about that here again soon. But yes, I believe those things are all great individual questions. And we could get deeper into that. But I think today the big question to me is not necessarily the I just have not had enough coffee today. No, I want to look at it from a 10,000 foot view. Should you go forth armed? And we can get into the minutia of how and why and size and everything else. But the question really becomes, should you go forth armed? And it is, but you're right, Rick. These are questions that we should be covering and talking about, I think, more often. A lot of times we find ourselves just covering some of the news of these issues, but I think the mechanics of it and some of the details are important. We've always advocated that if you're going to go forth armed, that you should at least have a concealed carry course under your belt, simply because it explains to you the legal aspects of defensive gun use and lethal force, etc. It's I think that is a critical part of understanding not only your responsibilities and your rights, but the inherent danger to you from a liability and a criminal standpoint if you are going to go forth armed and be able to defend yourself. I mean, great. It's the old axiom of better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6. I mean, I understand that, but you need to go into this thing eyes wide open, and getting a concealed carry course will really give you a lot of good details on what it means legally to go forth armed. Don't trust what's being portrayed on TV as if that's the reality of today. Okay, trust me. Don't do that. Anthony goes on to say the reality is that the chance of you'll find yourself in a situation or where you or someone you love or the people around you whose lives are in imminent danger is not zero. Yeah, there is a non-zero chance that something like that could happen. Now, maybe it's down in the 0.00 range somewhere. But by golly, I sure would feel foolish and sheepish if I did find myself in a situation like that and I was unable to defend myself or others because of that. I would feel really foolish. That's it for sure. All right. Let's sets. And I know I said that I know that I was preaching to the choir, the people who listen to this program, that there's a lot of pro-gun people who are listening. But if you aren't pro-gun, if you're just kind of in the middle and you're interested because, here's this bearded guy just talking about stuff like that, this is for you. I'm trying to make the point that we have to be responsible for our own actions. That I know that there's a whole cadre of people out there who say, well, look, that we should just leave it to the police. We shouldn't take the law into our own hands. And of course, we're not talking about that. We're talking about in the heat of the moment, somebody has decided to do something bad. Somebody has decided to break societal norms, and do something that will harm you or someone around you. And this, I know, will lead to questions about, well, whether there should be gun control. All I'm saying is this is a moment where you have to decide, do you want to take personal responsibility for your own safety? Or do you want to depend on the DMV? I saw this analogy the other day, and it stuck with me it's been like 2 weeks since I saw this, and it stuck with me every time I think that there was a writer, and by golly, I wish I remembered who it was, but I was reading a bunch of stuff, and they were basically said that anytime they talk about something that the government provides, they basically they analogize it to the DMV. And if any of us have ever spent a place in purgatory, you know that that purgatory resembles the DMV, right? I mean, great people and everything else, but it's just a slog. It's just, usually the most inefficient way. It's the most inefficient example of government. But this guy was basically saying, just substitute anything for government with the DMV. And so do you really want to, and I thought it was brilliant, because government, although they try and they have the best of intentions, they are definitely not the most efficient mechanism for getting things done. So do you really want to trust your safety or your family's safety, the safety of your loved ones or your coworkers, or do you really want to just throw that onto the competency of the DMV? The answer is no. Answer is no. I mean, anybody who's gone through a TSA checkpoint or inspection with your baggage that has firearms in it, especially more than one, and watch those people have a stroke because, I mean, I still remember coming back from Front Sight with a case that had a pistol and a rifle in it and a bunch of magazines. And you thought these TSA agents and Flagstaff were going to, you thought they were going to drop their transmissions right there on the ground. They have no idea. This is the efficiency of government. The people who are supposed to check your stuff have no idea about any of it. You've got to inform them how it works. That's kind of spooky, right? So I've decided to take care of myself. That was the ultimate decision. All right. Well, we're going to get into some of these stories on the other side. We'll be back with more. The Michael Duke Show. Okay. Yeah. Let the police handle it, but defund the police. I mean, there's a lot of dichotomous thinking going on there, right? There's a lot of dichotomous thinking on that. Zach says, if you pull it, be prepared to use it. That means understanding the consequences and legal ramifications of protecting yourself. I agree, Zach. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I believe that anybody who's decided to go forth armed should attend, even though we're a constitutional carry state and it's allowed to carry with it. We don't have to get a permit. I still think you should go take a concealed carry class, because that class has got a lot of great information. I mean, I thought, again, I had been carrying a gun for 15 or 20 years when I took my first concealed carry class. And I was really enlightened to some of the things. I mean, I knew a lot of it, but I didn't know all of it. And it was really enlightening to hear all the bits and bobs and the pieces, to talk to a law enforcement official who was there answering questions. It really, it's really interesting. Frank says, I rarely have seen a TSA agent check my guns. Most of the time, the TSA takes your gun cases to a room. Yeah, this is in Flagstaff. I just remember it because I was in Flagstaff, Arizona, which is a tiny airport, okay? I mean, a tiny airport. And they checked them right there on the floor in front of me when I rolled them over. What was ironic is that this is a tiny little airport, and that there were 3 TSA agents, all ladies, and they were all just having a meltdown over everything that was in this case. Because I had a rolling Pelican case, right, with a rifle in it. There was a pistol in it. There was boxed ammunition off to the side. Magazines were stacked. You open it up and it looks like something you'd see in a movie from, everything was nestled, cut out foam, all that stuff. And these ladies were just having a meltdown. And it actually was funny because it finally took this big, tall, 6-foot guy, TSA. He came over, he looked at it. He came over because they were all having freakouts about it. And he's like, oh, yeah. He goes, no, this is all good to go. Just put the car. And he looked at me and he goes, nice setup. That was what he said, but that's the thing. These other 3, it took 4 agents to figure out that this was okay. Right. That again, just reminds you that these folks have because I had packed everything according to the legal. I had flown down with this, and now I was just trying to fly home. Chris says they were probably DEI hires. I would not disagree with that because they had no idea. They didn't even know their own regulations. The lady's like, you can't have this. I'm like, yes, I can. It says, right. I flew down like this. This is how. And they brought the other guy. I mean, they just didn't know, all right. 100% said Zach on the training classes. They're invaluable information. And the information is also a weapon. 100%. Just scrolling backwards here. Brian said, and watch the TSA nearly wet themselves as they inspect. Yes, exactly. Anthony said it's because for the better part of 20 years, the gun control advocates have piled laws and restrictions onto the point of sale of legal firearms while simultaneously removing and codifying laws at the point of crime for criminals. There's an imbalance in justice where actual reform is needed. And I would 100% agree with that. They continue to shift the burden from those that are actually committing the crimes to law-abiding citizens. And we've talked about that on this program for years, that this is the easiest thing to do is to broad brush it, put a broad blanket approach. Instead of penalizing the people who are actually doing the crime, you lay a broad brush approach across everybody who is law-abiding, and all you do is burden the common average law-abiding citizens because, again, criminals, they don't care. They don't care. It's insane. This subject can get so involved, said Rick. How do you carry? What kind of device to carry with? Where on your body is the most comfortable? Do you carry extra ammo? On and on and on. Yeah. How do I carry? Waistband, inside the waistband. What kind of carry device? Kydex, custom Kydex holster. Where on your body is the most comfortable? Where I sit it right now. Do you carry extra ammo? Of course I do. And you'll never find. I think it was another Jeff Cooper. There was another Jeff Cooper quote or something about nobody ever came out of a gunfight saying, geez, I wish I had less ammo, right? But you're right, Rick. It is a deep subject that we can get it way into the weeds on. I saw this quote last night. David said, just remember, according to Jasmine Crockett, just because you commit a crime, it does not make you a criminal. That's an actual quote from Jasmine Crockett. She's like the gift that just keeps on giving. Just remember, because you committed a crime doesn't make you a criminal. No, I think that is the actual literal definition of it, Jasmine. But don't worry about it. You'll figure it out. All right, we got to go. We'll continue. Here we go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
I have 2 guns, one for each of you.
Firearms Friday.
As Thomas Jefferson stated, it is the right and duty of the people to be at all times armed.
Say hello to my little friend.
I say that the Second Amendment is, in order of importance, the First Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms is the one right that allows rights to exist at all.
The Michael Dukes Show. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Firearms.
From my cold, dead hands.
Friday.
This is my rifle, this is my gun, this is for mine, and this is for fun.
Firearms Friday.
That's right. It's our favorite day of the week. Firearms Friday, the day that we get a chance to chat about guns and the Second Amendment, gun rights, tips, tricks, tactics, and so much more. We just it was a free-for-all in the first hour, just kind of a stream of thoughts, stream of consciousness, where we were talking about whether or not you should be asking yourself the question of, should you go forth armed? I think the overwhelming response from the chat room is yes, you should. But again, I'm not saying that it's for everyone. Okay. I'm not saying that you should be required. I'm saying the bottom line is, to summate from hour one, the bottom line is that if you decide to go forth armed to protect yourself, your family, your loved ones, your coworkers, whoever it is that you've decided, most importantly, yourself and your family, that, there's some responsibilities attached to that. And first and foremost, I guess I'll quickly go over what I call the rule of three. The rule of three on this program. If you've listened to this program, you already know what they are, but I have what I call the rule of three, meaning if you've decided you're going to go forth armed, then you need to budget for that. And what I mean by that is the amount of money that you're going to invest in yourself and in your daily carry should be as follows. If the pistol costs $500, and that's just I'm just giving you a rough outline because I haven't bought a new pistol in a few years, but roughly $500 to $600 is what you'll pay for a decent pistol. But if the pistol is $500, you should commit to spending 3 times that amount to prepare yourself and to basically make sure that you are ready to go forth armed. So $500 should be for the pistol. The second tranche, the second $500, is for good accessories. And by accessories, I mean things like you need a good belt. If you're going to carry a pistol, and most of the time it's on your waist, you should have not a thin, stretchy faux leather plastic belt. You need a good solid belt. And I recommend either a double stitched, a Cordura, like a rigger's belt, or a full leather, stiff leather duty belt. Something like that will hold up to holding that weight on your waist day in and day out. You need a good holster. I'm not talking about a $5 Uncle Mike's, clip on the belt. I'm talking about a good, solid, either custom built leather, or I prefer Kydex holster that is custom formed to your daily carry pistol. And that means that, if God forbid, and Kydex has got the advantage of, if for some reason you are, for example, using the restroom and you go to pull your pants up and your pistol is attached to the edge of your pants and everything turns over upside down as you're trying to pull it up, meaning that the holster flips upside down, the pistol won't come flying out of the holster, right? Which is, it's happened. You can find stories where that's happened. So a good solid holster, so good belt, good holster, obviously cleaning accessories for cleaning it, and snap caps, dummy loads, and maybe even a, one of those Mantis, what do they call them? The X systems, where you can do dry fire exercises. You get dummy rounds and snap caps for dry firing and malfunction drills, because you'll be doing a lot of dry firing, unless you want to buy a bunch of ammo. You'll be doing a lot of dry firing for practice. And maybe even one of those little smartphone apps where you can shoot your smartphone across the room and it'll tell you it'll help you practice. That's the second tranche of $500. And the third tranche of $500 would be for a professional training class. And I recommend that if you are going to go forth concealed carry, even though we are a constitutional carry state, and you, if you're listening somewhere else, may live in a constitutional carry state where you don't have to beg the government's permission to exercise your rights, you still need that information. There's a lot of great information in these concealed carry classes, including a presentation by law enforcement in the state of Alaska, anyway, a presentation by law enforcement on the use of deadly force and explaining to you when exactly you are allowed and what the ramifications are if you do such a thing, to use deadly force or to draw your firearm, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the rule of three. And I'm not saying it should be mandated or required by law, but I'm saying that if you want to be a responsible gun owner and you've decided to go forth armed, that's what you should be doing. All right. So that kind of summates the whole first hour and my thoughts on it. And I think that if you decide that you should, if you feel like you have the temperament and you want to take responsibility, you should go forth armed. Not saying it's for everybody, because like I said, we all have that crazy uncle that we know should not have access to firearms, right? I mean, we all know somebody like that who does not have the temperament for something like that. Anyway, let's continue on here. I want to go back. The phone lines are open, 319-527-3864, and I'd love to hear what you have to say today on any of the topics that we've broached on, or any of the, anything related to firearms. We'd love to hear it. Fred is in Rhode Island. He tunes in every week from over on the East Coast in the People's Republic of Rhode Island. Those people are crazy. I mean, that not the people there, but that state is crazy. Anyway, Fred joins to talk about whatever's on his mind. Good morning, Fred. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Michael. The whole thing with concealed carry, it sets up an invisible barrier to those the lawbreakers, whether they be crazies or whether they be just criminals in general, or whatever the case may be, that drives them and then motivates them to do what they do. That he set up an invisible barrier to the criminal element as to what's not. It's a very bad idea for them to be conducting what they're going to be doing in the presence of people who could be carrying and no one, and it's all invisible because it's concealed carry. Now, as opposed to open carry.
Right.
Concealed carry, it turns into a shell game for them. Who is, who is not, how many people around me are actually carrying and how many people around me are not carrying. And there's no way for them to know. And it sets up, it just kind of like puts them in a position where they're better off not to do it than to do it, because more than likely, if they're in the presence of someone with a firearm and they do something to attack somebody or threaten somebody, they're going to be on the wrong end of a bad situation. And that's for that I think that sets up a barrier, and that law enforcement could never really deter.
Right.
Way more effective than the law enforcement.
Yeah, no. It is.
My view.
You're 100% right, Fred. It's a deterrent. And it's a silent deterrent, against those kind of. In fact, we just the last time we had Dr. Lott on the show here a couple weeks ago, we were talking about that, how the vast majority of these shootings have taken place in gun-free zones. And in fact, that the shooters themselves, in their manifestos, their diaries, their notes, they talk specifically about how they target these gun-free zones because they know that they can wreak maximum havoc with little resistance, right? I mean, even the thing at UVU with Charlie Kirk, that was a gun-free zone. But it stopped nothing. What is going to stop it is, like you said, knowing that there are people there that are potentially armed. And that's why there's some school districts now that are putting up signs, the school districts that have gotten wise and decided to allow this, that put forward a sign on their front of their schools that say there are select members of the staff that are armed, basically, is what the sign says, to paraphrase it. Select members of this staff are armed and trained to protect the student body. And that's just a warning. This is no longer a gun-free zone. You fool around and find out. Come on in and take your money, pays your chances, kind of thing. That is you're 100% right on that, Fred.
Well, I think that, and the fact that you have the ability, if you know something's going to go down, say something and prevent it from happening in the first place. And if you happen to be wrong, like I say, it's a lot easier to say, "I'm sorry, we made a mistake," than you have a condolences for your loss. It's a hell of a lot easier for everyone concerned. That to go down that road, see something, say something, and carry concealed. And I think you got to put the criminal element in a very precarious situation where they're going to have to think long and hard as to whether or not they want to do their dastardly deed without being taken out of the game altogether.
Right. Well, right. I mean, how many?
Is it really worth it?
Right.
Those who aren't totally insane would probably say no, it's not.
Right. I mean, how many times have you seen a mass shooter at a gun show? Or how many times have you seen an armed robber hit a gun store? Right? When they're open and there are people, it just doesn't happen. Why? Because there's pretty good odds that you're going to get shot dead immediately. And this is another reason why I'm so against the idea, not the legality, but the idea of open carry. I know there's people out there who are doing it as a political statement, or that's how they do. Again, that's just begging in a situation like you're describing. That's just begging for you to be the first target. Somebody said the other day, concealed carry. He said open carriers, or as I like to call them, potential chalk outlines, right? Because you're going to be the first person that's going to be downed for sure.
Well, you have to look at it from one of the standpoint too. I mean, open carry. There are people in society, obviously, you see them on a daily basis, who don't like firearms. They just have a phobia, or you get into that. You want to get into that aspect of it. They just don't agree with the whole Second Amendment thing, which is their right to do so. I mean, they can express whatever view they want to express. I prefer that they keep it to themselves, but that's just me.
Right.
But they don't like fun. And as open carry, it kind of puts them in a very, very uncomfortable situation. So I think out of respect from that standpoint, the open carry part of it, you can do without it. Once it makes them a target to some person that would be doing something to take them out first. So who the hell needs that? And also those who don't like firearms, not necessarily to upset them, but but then again, show a little bit of respect. Saying,
well, okay, we're fighting a hearts and
something we don't have to display, openly,
Right. Well, we're fighting a hearts.
So,
we're fighting a hearts.
Concealed carry is definitely the way to go.
Right.
For a number of reasons.
Right.
And it also keeps the criminal element in the shell game, saying who is and who's not. And I don't know, and there's no way for me to know. Therefore, I should not do.
Right. Well, we're playing. You're right, Fred, because we're in a hearts and minds campaign, right? That's what we've advocated on this program for years. That we're trying to win the hearts and minds of not necessarily those who are hardcore anti-gun, but we're looking for those people in the middle. And a lot of those people in the middle, all their education about guns has come from the news media or the entertainment industry or movies. They have no thing. And so, yes, they might be uncomfortable seeing some guy with a Glock strapped to his side walking through Walmart, or somebody with a shotgun over their shoulder ordering coffee at Starbucks. I know that some of these people are just trying to make a statement, but if you want to win hearts and minds, you got to be smart about it. And, you know, you don't want to freak out all the normies, right? You don't want to freak out all the straight people here who are not necessarily anti-gun, but not necessarily pro-gun. Just use common sense, aside from the fact that you're making yourself a target in those situations as well. If something were to happen, you'd be the first one to go down, because a criminal probably has it concealed as well, and you won't know that they're there until it's too late.
You're absolutely right. I mean, definitely correct on all aspects there.
All right, Fred. Well, thank you for calling in. As always, my friend, it's great to hear from you. I'm looking forward to an update on what's happening with your assault weapons ban there in Rhode Island. I know there's probably not going to be much till happen till after the first of the year, but keep us in the loop, okay?
Certainly will. Okay, Michael, you take care. Have a good week.
Thanks so much for calling in. 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864 if you want to call in. We got one final segment. I'm going to get to these news stories. I really am. That's coming up. I just love talking to you guys, though. I just love talking to you. So feel free to dial in, and let's continue this. Willie Waffle's coming up at the end of the show today. We'll lighten it up with some entertainment news. And I know that Willie and I, because we've already kind of giggled about it a little bit amongst ourselves, we're going to talk about this whole Jimmy Kimmel thing, which it's good and bad at the same time. And I'll explain my ideas and thoughts on that here when we come to it. Back with more of the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. Break time. Let me see here. I'm doing something. Shh, don't tell anybody. I'm doing something right now. Okay, there we go. Let me fix that, put that up there. All right. Let me go back to the comments section. An older guy opened carry. The only issue, he open carried with an open holster on the back of his belt, says Harold. I mean, that's the other thing that in Harold's right. I mean, he makes a valid point here. That's the other thing. If you are open carrying, your situational awareness needs to be cranked up to 11, right? 11, because you just don't know. I mean, I remember that there was a situation in Fairbanks where somebody was open carrying and they were at a 7-Eleven or whatever, and they were, at the register to get something, and somebody walked up behind them and grabbed their gun right off their holster. Now, nothing came out of it other than it was a learning experience to know that you should be paying attention to everything that's going on around you. And if you're open carrying, that needs to be ratcheted all the way up, because you just don't know. And that's the other doubt. I just don't like open carrying. I have done it occasionally, but in specific circumstances. When I was young, I did it much younger, I did it a few times as part of a political statement as well. But I'll be honest with you, it is not something that I suggest or really support. I mean, it should be legal. I'm not saying it shouldn't be legal, but I'm just saying, is it smart? Is it smart to do? That's what we should be asking ourselves. That's, all right. Start teaching young. Mandatory class in school. Used to do it a long time ago. Bring it back. Some kids will get it. Some won't. As they grow older, maybe they will remember how many kids were in those classes and become advocates for carrying, just like shop class. I mean, I think that there should be a safety course. I think there should be a safety course in school, at least that they will know that if they come across a gun, they'll know what not to do. You know what I mean? What not to do. Zach said, when I lived in Arizona, I had a Border Patrol officer ask me if I was armed, and I replied, no, sir. And he asked, why not? Changed my thought process after our follow-on conversation about safety and preparation for self-defense. I mean, isn't that great, Zach? Isn't that fantastic? I mean, it reminds me of the video that was going around here a couple months ago about the officer in Texas who was talking to truck drivers and basically was encouraging the truck drivers because there was some robberies that were going on in truck stops, and he said, you guys, you need to arm yourselves because we're not here, we're not everywhere, we can't protect you. And I thought that was a brilliant video to share, 100% for sure. Let's see. Some theologians say that the first section of the book of Job shows the fear can activate Satan. To put it in video game terms, says Anthony, open carrying basically makes you the loot goblin in real life. The target of the loot goblin for sure. Harold says, I concealed carry the entire Anchorage Police Department. Right. You know why I carry a gun, Harold? Because a cop is too heavy. That's why. 911. What is the response time to your domicile, Harold? Do you know? Do you know how long it would take from the moment you dialed 911 and said, I need help? Do you know how long it would take for them to get there? It's a question. When you have one police officer for every 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 people, whatever the number is in your community, what are the statistical probabilities that they'll be there in time? That's the question. That's why I carry a gun, because a cop is too darn heavy. All right, let's get back to it.
What the hell's an assault weapon?
If we could just figure out how to get all of the murder guns and the attack guns and not keep selling those to people and just sell protection guns, I think that would be great and solve a lot of problems.
Does this mean that if we hurt your feelings, you'd consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can live with that. Here's Michael Dukes.
All right, continuing on now. We got some news stories here that I want to get to, but again, your phone calls reign supreme. 319-527-3864. It is Firearms Friday. We got another call here. We'll start off over here. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good morning. This is Ino from North Pole. How are you?
Good, Ino. How are you?
Hey, I just wanted to remind your listening audience out there that sometimes what you were saying comes true. We had an incident in North Pole a few years where a couple of youngsters decided they were going to go buy a gun from a service member, I think he was, and they decided to try to pull a robbery on him, and one of them got shot and the other one ended up in prison for I don't know how long as part of, because somebody got killed while he was in the middle of doing a robbery. So,
right.
Yeah, definitely you carry your gun and they don't know about it. That's a good thing. And that's one of the things I want to do this winter here is to go take my concealed carry class.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea for you to get the information for sure. And you're right. It happens all over the place. I mean, it's no respecter of persons or places. Those kind of things happen. I remember that incident. They tried to rob the guy. He ended up shooting one. The other one was apprehended. And because there was a death, he was charged. Yep. He was charged as if he had killed his friend. That's how the law works.
Yeah.
And the guy who actually shot them was vindicated in that he was defending himself in that situation. So it does happen, and you have to be prepared for those situations 100%.
Yeah. So it's our country right now is in a precarious situation. I mean, I never thought I would see some of the things that we see right now, and that's another reason why you should be aware and be armed when you go out somewhere.
Well,
So.
be prepared for anything, right? I mean, that's prepare for the worst and hope for the best, and all your surprises will be happy ones. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, I know.
Well, we appreciate you, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you
Have a
for
good
listening.
day.
Thanks for calling in. I appreciate it. Terry is calling in, I think from the Matsu, if I'm not mistaken. Are you with me, Terry?
Hello.
Hello, Terry.
Hi. This isn't, it's kind of gun related, but not necessarily.
Okay.
It's how long it takes the cops to get to you. 19 years ago, I was driving my son back and forth to school. We were following school bus. For some reason, the bus driver stopped for this crazy lady walking down the street in a slip in the middle of the winter and asked the lady if she was okay. The lady jumped on the bus, beat the stuffings out of the bus driver, and then started going down the aisle of the bus, smacking kids and whatnot at the back. And I'm yelling at my son, call the cops, call the cops. Anyway, so the back of the bus, this big kid jumps on this lady and chokeholds her down on the seat. My son gives me the phone, and he goes back and helps this kid that's got this lady held down. She was whacked out on drugs. And I got the kids off the bus. The bus driver was useless. It took over 30 minutes for the state troopers to get to us. And we were dealing with a busload of maybe middle school kids. Sent one kid home to get his dad and a gun. But if you're not protected, cops aren't going to be there in time.
Yeah.
It was really scary.
No, and again, that's the fallacy that we're sold time and time and time again, right? Oh, leave it to the police. They're the professionals. They're the only ones that should be allowed to have firearms because they're the professionals. But the problem is, statistically, like I said, if you have a police force that's 1 in 1,000 people, or even 1 in 500, that's a really good ratio. I mean, because many places it's 1 for 4 or 5 or 6 or 8,000 people. Statistically, the probability of them being there immediately for you is very low. It's the old adage of, why do I carry a gun? Because carrying a cop a cop is too heavy, kind of thing. When seconds count, the police are only minutes away. And I don't care if you've got the best response time in the universe of, 3, 2, 3, 4 minutes. That's an extraordinarily fast response time, by the way, 3 or 4 minutes. If you do, just think of all the bad things that can happen in 2 or 3 or 4 minutes. You have to be able to defend yourself. And especially in Alaska, I mean, heck, where I'm at, it's probably like it used to be when I was in Matsu. If I made a phone call to say I need police at my house, it would be 30 or 40 minutes before I'd see somebody. You have to be able to take responsibility for yourself.
Yep, it was a scary situation, especially with all those kids.
Yeah.
Like, get them off the bus, get them out of there. And I called the state trooper, 911 3 times, but it took them a half an hour to get to us.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And
wanted to bring that up. It takes time.
Yep. It takes time. And what can happen in that time is the big question. All right. Thank you, Terry. I appreciate you calling in this morning. Got one more line here. Let's go over here to see who this is. Good morning. Who is this? And where are you calling from?
Morning. This is Bubba, North Pole.
Morning, Bubba.
And it's been a while since we talked, but statistically, and I appreciate the police. I truly do. But statistically, 99.5% of the time, the police are real good at filling out after action activity reports. What happened?
Oh, absolutely.
That's
I mean,
what they're good at.
they're there to investigate the crime. There's nothing. I mean, Rose v. the United States, I believe, is the or maybe it was Rose v. Washington, D.C. I can't remember. It was a court case where they basically said, hey, the cops say to protect and serve, and they didn't protect me. And the court case held that, well, they don't have the their responsibility is not to protect you. It's basically to clean up after the fact. That's what their responsibility is.
They're good at that. But again, I'm glad we have them there. I'm not anti. Blue lives matter to me.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we've got to cover ourselves.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. All right. Well, thank you, Bubba. Appreciate the call. Thank you for calling in and sharing your thoughts with us today. Lots of calls this morning, 319-527-3864. Dave's on the line over here. Good morning, Dave.
Hey, good morning, Michael. How are you?
Good, sir. Good. What's on your mind?
Well, I think on the topic, a good subtopic would be the type of insurance that you should be carrying while you're concealed carrying. Because, it's going to happen. Somebody's going to get shot, and you're going to get sued, and probably go to jail.
Yeah, no, we've had that discussion before, and it does deserve its own segment or own hour on the show, because there are pros and cons to that. And I personally have never had concealed carry insurance, but I know people who have had it. I've also seen cases where they've used the fact that you had concealed carry insurance against them, because that means it was premeditated. You were planning on shooting somebody. So there's pros and cons to it. I agree. And definitely is something that we should dig into at a future time.
Right. Well, I appreciate your time, man.
All right. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate you calling in and being part of it today. All right. I'm just looking at the clock and I realize that I'm running out of time. Okay, we got to go. We'll be back with more. I didn't get to my stories. Whew, that's what the commercial breaks are for. All right, Willie Waffle up next, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Back with more after this.
Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, I'm going to try. A lot of phone calls this morning, which is great.
Goodbye.
It was great. I love that. But we're going to turn that off right now because I don't know. There's so many. Let me get to the chat room. Let me go back to the chat room here. Let's see. Anthony Angelus, Rick says Anthony, because Anthony basically said, to put it in video game terms, open carry basically means makes you the loot goblin in real life. Rick says, Anthony, that's another issue. Video games influencing young minds. Rick, I just got to respectfully disagree. I just don't see that as being, I know they keep wanting to push. It just reminds me of the whole satanic panic over D&D back in the day, right? It's the same kind of thing. There are plenty of people out there who have played video games their entire life and have never had a problem with that. I have a problem with that. Let's see. An observation about teachers carrying, says Brian. No matter how careful or how well the teacher carry rigs may be, kids are going to figure it out, and it will soon be common knowledge. Internal shooters are going to know who to go after first. Not saying it's a bad idea, but with qualification. Yeah, the teachers who do it's going to have to be very. You'll have to be careful. You'll have to, it will take consideration. That's the fact. Rick just said in comments to my comments on video games, he says, yes, but it only takes one. But again, to penalize all the other kids who never had who had no, that's like saying, again, try and take away all the guns. They're still going to get it, and it only takes one. Again, I don't think you can lay the blame on video games. I think that there's probably a lot of other things that are going on there. Richie says the Kimmel cleansing isn't a free speech issue. A private company made a decision which is well within their right, as they are not the government, yada yada. I'm going to address that here in a minute with Willie. All right. I agree with you, Richie, but again, as Brian said, with a qualification, and I'll tell you what that's all about. Let's see. Yeah. Maybe a posted sign that replaces "This building bans firearms" with one that reads, "Upon entering this building, there are trained members of staff who are armed. Consider yourself informed and make good choices." That's essentially what some of these signs have said, Richie. Basically said there are select members of staff who are armed and trained to protect the student body and the staff. It's essentially what they don't say. It just says basically there's somebody in here has a gun. So come on in and FAFO. That's basically what the signs are saying. That's what's, that's what's going on. Let's see. Anthony agrees with me. Video games don't influence anyone. If you play a video game and decide to attack people, you were mentally ill before booting up the PlayStation. Full stop. Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I agree. I think that there was already something underlying there. Something was fundamentally broken before they climbed onto their PlayStation. Rick says he gets where I'm coming from, but you have to admit some of those games are just unbelievable. I mean, unbelievable as in realism, as in, and maybe it's just not your cup of tea, Rick. I understand. But I mean, like, I don't play Call of Duty. I don't play Battlefield. I mean, I have in the past played some of those games, but it's just not my cup of tea. They may not be for everybody. For some, they're everything. If you want to play Fortnite, I mean, that's cartoony and everything else. It's not real. Again, it's not real. It's the reality versus fantasy thing. And I think that's where people, lose the plot on this whole thing, is that if somebody can't decide between reality and fantasy, there's already, as Anthony said, something fundamentally broken going on. That's where I think we're at there. So, anyway, we'll see where it goes from there. Harold's talking about adequate funding for public safety. I mean, the thing is, Harold, and I agree with you, we probably should be looking at public safety and the training more. But you would have to have a 1-to-1 police officer to citizen ratio to make it so that you shouldn't go forth armed. That's that's just, it's unsustainable. You just can't do it. If you had a 1 in 500 ratio, you're doing great on a police department, right? It's just not going to happen. All right, we got to go. Phone's buzzing, and we're ready to do it. I suppose I should change my my color scheme over here so that we match. Boom, look at that. All right, let's get to it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's talk about Jimmy Kimmel, shall we? Let's get to it. Here we go. Okay. All right. The weekend. Man, nobody can't get here fast. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know how we got to Friday already, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful for it. Thank you. I don't know how we got here so fast, but I am grateful that it's here. Another man who's always grateful for the weekend. Willie, well, he puts it on an idol in he's got a little shrine in his apartment, right there. And he worships the weekend, right? I mean, am I wrong?
Yes. Willie? Oh, absolutely. The weekend is the only reason for us to live, my friends. It is, seriously, it's like Loverboy used to say, we're working for the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. It feels that way, doesn't it? All right. Well, let's dive into it here. We've got
there's something happened in the news. What?
Oh my gosh, we got all these other news stories that we were going to talk about all this week, and of course the one news story that is sucking all the oxygen out of the room is the fact that Jimmy Kimmel got the axe from ABC. Now,
he hasn't been fired yet.
Okay,
he hasn't been fired yet. He's on indefinite hiatus while they discuss next steps.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, okay. Okay. I'm with you. He's never coming back to ABC. I think at this point, it's just the lawyers are getting together trying to figure out what is the smallest amount of money we have to give this guy to make him go away.
Right.
Because it's over. There's no way out of this. Okay. I'm just going to say, listen, what would be the way he could come back if he issues a full apology? He's not going to do that.
Yeah, no,
he's not going to do that.
I don't know if he, I don't know if he can come back or not. I mean, he was he was number 2 in the ratings for late night. He's strong in a demographic of 18 to 25. So, I mean, he had some pluses, but the problem is, and here's the thing, I'm going to probably make some listeners mad with this, but let me just say this.
That's okay.
Jimmy Kimmel, I think it's totally fine that he got fired or indefinite hiatus or whatever. I think that's fine. My concern with this whole thing is the fact that the Brendan Carr, the chair of the FCC, kind of got involved, started making comments, and it appears, from the outside looking in, it appears that they were trying to influence ABC into getting him fired, which I have a problem with, because if this had been Biden doing the same thing to, I don't know, fill in the blank with some conservative commentator, I would have a problem with that. And so everybody who's crowing about we should throw the FCC and get their weight behind it, and this deal with Nexstar and all these other things, if you're trying to kowtow to the FCC, that's a problem, because it may be great under the Trump reign, but what happens when you get Kamala or Biden 2.0 or Gavin Newsom or somebody in there who is what if they then weaponize the same? That's the problem. This is a slippery slope. Yes. Yeah. Kimmel could have been fired. You have free speech, but there's also consequences to your speech. I get that. But the fact that it looks like they're kind of weaponizing governmental agencies to that worries me. That worries me there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm with you. I mean, that's the rub here. I mean, it's one thing if the affiliates are angry because they feel that what was said by Kimmel was offensive, and they do not want to carry that, because in this way, the affiliates are ABC's customers.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
I mean, they pay fees. They are carrying the broadcasting, and when you're a customer, you can speak up when you have been offended by what you are buying. Okay.
Yep.
And I think when it started off as only Nexstar is upset, it was a different story. I think what you're seeing now is exactly what you talked about, and I think that's what worries me too. Is the use of a government entity, the FCC, to punish people for basically not being on your side.
Right.
I mean, and I think this is a little bit more clearly that than with Colbert. I think this is clearly that. Yeah. I think this is clearly that much more than the battle with 60 Minutes and CBS. Okay, I think with Colbert, the business model is not very good, and CBS wanted to save some money. They were selling the company. They're trying to save money. They're trying to look more profitable. Okay, that was a financial decision. Okay, 60 Minutes, you're a news program. You used your editing powers to try to make one candidate look better. Yeah. That I find to be a problem. Okay. But with Kimmel, I think, what we've seen is almost right out of the gate. What happened was Brendan Carr, the head of the FCC, basically said, we're going to review all your licenses. And we're going to question whether or not you are, quote unquote, operating in the public interest.
Right.
And so, I think that's where you're saying we're trying to use the regulations to control what you say. And we're not trying to control what the news is saying, or we're not trying to control what the news is. We're not trying to control the news being fair and impartial.
Right.
We're going after a comedian who's got a big mouth.
Yeah.
And that's what bothers me. And when you go deeper into this, you got to realize there's a lot of money at stake for Disney, for Nexstar, because they do have very serious business before the FCC right now.
Yeah.
Nexstar is one of the biggest affiliate owners, one of the biggest TV station owners in the country. They are getting bigger. They are buying the Tegna Group, which is also a fairly big television station owner.
Which is going to requires approval.
Needs an FCC approval.
And a change to FCC rules. It requires both of those things. So although I agree that Nexstar can say, well, we don't want it because it was offensive, I also can see it as potentially currying favor with the FCC by doing that, right? So, and whether it's true or not, it's the appearance, and that's what worries me. That's what worries me about this.
And Disney has something at stake too, because they've been cutting this big deal with the NFL. And they have business before the FCC that they need to get approved from that deal. So, basically, this is a way to go after all the entities in one fell swoop. Now, I think Jimmy's done. I don't see how he comes back from this, or at least comes back to ABC from this. Listen, right now it's already been floated that the offer was if he issued a full apology and donated some money to Charlie Kirk's organization, well, maybe we could forgive him. And there's no way Jimmy Kimmel's doing that.
Right.
I don't think he can do that. I don't think he can do that and maintain any integrity.
Right.
And I think that that's what's gonna be the breakup point. He's just basically gonna say, listen, I showed up for work. You didn't want me to go on the air. Pay me.
Yeah,
you don't want me around anymore?
Yeah.
Pay me. I have a contract for this amount of money for I think his contract is up next year. Pay off the rest of the year and I'll get out of your hair. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
See you later. Because he'll go off and he'll do podcasts and maybe he'll go back and do more stand-up. Right? He's never really been a stand-up guy. He's really been more of a radio guy. I take that back. So I think maybe he'll do podcasts. Maybe he'll do Netflix. Maybe he'll do something along those lines. He also has a production company which sells a lot of its stuff to ABC.
Right.
So that's going to be uncomfortable as well. But I just think when that move was made, I think when ABC and Disney basically said we're taking you off the air. That was when they made the decision. It's over forever. It's just all over but the shouting and signing the legal paperwork, baby.
And then there were two, right? Seth Rogen and Jimmy Fallon,
well,
right? That's it.
Well, Seth Meyers and Jimmy Fallon are left.
Meyers,
and Seth Meyers' show is doing even worse financially. And I honestly didn't think that they had much of a chance of getting renewed when their contract is up next year because they've already started cutting back. And then even NBC even started cutting back on Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy Fallon is no longer 5 nights a week. They air basically a repeat on Friday nights, so that cuts their production costs down because these programs cost a lot of money to do, and they're from an old economic construct that does not exist in television anymore. And so you were already going to see the demise of late night television. It started a few years ago, but this is going to hasten it. I even read someplace where somebody said, "Hey, what's Saturday Night Live going to do?" Because boy, NBC likes to do business too. So it'll be wild. It'll be wild. But I just listen. You and I talked about this a little bit. I think a lot of this is just everybody's trying to pay back everybody for everything.
Right.
It's like Trump's trying to pay back what the Democrats did. He's trying to pay back when the New York Post was censored when they had the laptop story dead to rights, and Twitter shut them down and wouldn't let people share the story and wouldn't let the Post post it. And, all the other things that we've heard about over the years. I mean, we've seen those fights. And I'm just like, I'm at the point now. Maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm crazy, but I'm like, I just want the war to end, man.
Yeah.
I just want to see us. Well, I want to see fair, balanced reporting.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Well,
we are in a post-truth era, and it scares me because we need truth now more than ever, and I don't know where we get truth anymore.
Well, but the gotcha game, I mean, that's dangerous, right? Because you got me, so I'll get you, and then it escalates, and then in 20 years from now, I mean, I can't imagine. Somebody's got to be the bigger person and say enough of this, and we're not going to weaponize government. We're not going to allow it. We'll call it out when it happens, and we'll continue. That's what should happen. But anyway,
I don't know how that happens unless we have some massive event. I mean, dude, you and I are of the age. I remember, and you remember this too, when September 11th happened, and everybody talked about how this is going to bring the country back together. This is going to make us all, love our neighbors and be closer together. Do you think that happened in the 25 years since this went down?
No, it's a tough deal.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's. Wow, we really stretched that one out.
Sorry.
No,
this is the biggest thing that's happened in entertainment in a long time.
And it's crazy, man. The whole thing is thing is just so super crazy. Let's. I guess we'll hit Superman real quick. I want to know about Superman.
Yeah, you want to hear? I want to tell you about the Muppets too.
Okay, tell me about the Muppets too.
Okay, so Superman. Today, Superman is available on HBO Max, my friends. That's right.
Nice.
If you didn't go see it in the theaters and you're an HBO Max subscriber, you have got it on your HBO Max. And hey, it was the biggest grossing comic book movie of the year. I think it's actually one of my favorite movies of the year. I might actually watch it again over the weekend. I really enjoyed it. So Superman is there, and the Muppets. You don't think the Muppets aren't? I'm not going to call it a comeback. They never went away, and they're never going away. Yes, the Muppets are making a comeback. Disney Plus announced that they will be airing a special Muppet Show revival for the 50th anniversary of The Muppet Show. It will air next year, which will be the 50th anniversary of their 1976 premiere of The Muppet Show. It will be a one-off. It'll be basically a story of the Muppets putting on their show, just like the show used to. And it will be hosted by Sabrina Carpenter. It is being produced by Seth Rogen and his group. And the rumor is that they really want this to take off, to bring back the Muppet Show again, so that this would almost be like a pilot, like a little test to see if people want more Muppets. And dude, I want more Muppets. We need the Muppets, man.
We need some lighter side stuff for sure. All right.
Yeah.
We got about 2.5, 3 minutes here. So that takes us over to the streams and theaters. And I'm just going to let you go hog wild here. So you got 3 and you got 2.5 minutes. Go.
All right. Well, and I gotta say, nothing really great this week. I'm just gonna get it out there. A big, bold, beautiful journey. This is the big, fantasy, romantic love story between Colin Farrell and Margot Robbie as they meet at this wedding, and fate and some sort of mysterious power brings them together as they drive down the road, and there's a door, and they go through the door, and it gives them a chance to go back in time to the moments in their lives that broke their hearts, that made them not want to commit to other people, that made them kind of reserved, and they're supposed to learn a lesson to maybe help them fall in love right here. And it just, what can I say? I mean, it feels like two movies smushed together.
Okay.
I felt like one of them, if they had one person go on this journey, and then they meet the other one at the end, and you're like, oh, they've learned their lesson. I think that would have been a better story. I'm at 1.5 waffles. Dialogue's too cute, and I think you have two great actors with not great material here. All right, I'm running out of time. Him. This is the big horror movie.
Right,
this is a rising football star who thinks he's going to make it big, and something horrible happens. He's one injury away from losing everything, and he gets to train with his idol for a week and learn what makes you one of the greatest football players ever. And he might not like what it turns out to be. Yeah, because it's a horror movie, dude. And and it really does kind of rope you in. Like, it starts off with all the stuff that we already know is horrible about trying to be a professional athlete. Now, the injections, the blood transfusions, all the things that happen. But then we start to realize there's something more mystical and fanatical about it. I'm at 2.5 waffles. I think it goes way over the edge, but maybe it does have to go over the edge because it's a horror movie.
Yeah, I saw the trailer for this, and I was like, whoa, that got dark really quick. I mean, that was like,
yes,
what?
It does.
That went from 0 to woo, in your face. Make a deal with the devil, why don't you, kind of thing. Anyway, all right, so him 2.5 stars, and then we're not going to get to Black Rabbit because we're out of time. But I appreciate you talking. I'm glad we could share some thoughts on this stuff. It's been good to chat with you today, my friend. Thanks for coming on board.
Anytime.
We will see you. We'll see you next week as well. All right, folks. That does it for me, Willie Waffle, wafflemovies.com. Next week, Dina McCharg from Matsu and Brett Rotterman from The Interior as we continue our local candidate interviews. Be kind, love one another, live well. We'll see you. Okay, Willie Waffle. I guess Black Rabbit. Give it to me real quick here. We got a couple minutes.
Yeah. It's a mini series with Jason Bateman and Jude Law. They're brothers in Brooklyn, and oh man, they got trouble. they got trouble on top of trouble on top of trouble on top of trouble. And it's 8 episodes of us trying to figure out how are they going to get out of this mess, right? Jude Law's trying to run like the hottest restaurant in town. He's got an opportunity to achieve his dream and pick up a space that will make a really fancy, amazing restaurant. But there's scandal at his current place, and he's trying to keep it quiet. And then you've got Jason Bateman, who owes a lot of money to some really, really bad people, and they want to be paid back. Yeah,
okay, that's not going to end well.
No, it's not. It's not. And what really is getting me is it is so slow. Oh my God. Oh, excuse me. It is 8 episodes. Each one's an hour long. I'm only like in about 3 episodes, and I'm like, something better happen. Okay, because like they start off the whole series with where it's gonna go. Like they give you the big shocking action scene at the beginning of the series, and you're like, wow, I want to know how they got there. And then you spend the next episodes going, dude, are they going to do more than just talk? Because even their dialogue is not very interesting. Oh. It's not very cool. It's not very witty. Like, I need some story development. I need some character development. Right. I need something more, man. Like, they could have cut out half of this thing. I think made it tighter and more exciting. So I'm at 1.5 waffles right now.
Okay. All right. Well, you have to let us know later on how that works out, because it's just crazy stuff. All right. Well, Willie, thanks for coming on. What's next week, real quick?
Oh, next week, Leonardo DiCaprio movie, One Battle After Another.
Okay. All right. We'll have to see what that's all about. All right, Willie Waffle. Thank you, my friend. Folks, we will see you on Monday. I hope you have a great, great weekend. Thanks for coming on board. We'll see you then.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.